That's enough of that. All right. Welcome back. All right, kids. This is the Generation X Guide to Drugs and Alcohol. All the guide you need coming up right here, right now. All right? So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the big daddy, alcohol. Alcohol. Boy, this is a tough one, man. I mean, in some ways not. All right, let's start with the effects. So, first of all, it tastes nasty. Pretty much any kind. You'll notice it's made into 50 different things, or 150, and the reason is because it's not good. When you finally ingest the raw alcohol, you'll know your body's like, oh, that shit's poison. That's the truth. But there are some uses for slight poisoning of the self under certain circumstances, as crazy as it sounds. And look, I say some uses advisedly. Let me just say that there is nothing on this list that I'm about to list that you need to get through life, okay? There are no particular drugs that are required for a fulfilling life. So you don't need any of this shit, really. But it's here. So you might want to just partake on some of them for some particular reasons. And I'll go into which ones for which reasons at what times and why. But let's get back to alcohol. So alcohol obviously covers booze, heavy booze. It covers beer and wine. You can become an alcoholic on beer and wine. You can also use a little bit of alcohol and go through the rest of your life without becoming an alcoholic. That's why I say it's a tricky one, because everybody who cracks open their first bit of alcohol is going to feel at least this, and that is to say, there is the common feeling that it gives to its drinkers is one of, I'm going to say, invisibility, bulletproofness, and strength. That's the joke is you become 6 foot tall, invisible, and bulletproof after you drink. Or it's liquid courage, they say. These things are partially true. Interestingly, the question you have to ask yourself is, do you really want to replace some of your actual courage with some liquid courage? And I'll get more into that later when we get into some of the other stuff. But keep that in mind, that if you're using a substance to do something, you create momentum to keep using that substance to do that thing. That is, you link those two things together. And you can break that link, and that's very important, because the important thing, if you take away anything from this list I'm about to give to you, is if you use any of these drugs, you can expand your mind and your heart in ways that seem like they would be inaccessible, or at least, more randomly accessible if you didn't use them. So, I mean, I can tell you that the people who do use them, and I will have used most of the stuff on this list, in theory. Generally, I think they would say that they're better off for having done so. But so many people not. So you got to be real careful. And I'll tell you which ones. And I'll tell you where the slippery slopes are. So let's get back to alcohol. Most people just start alcohol with a little bit of beer, a little bit of wine, and that's fine. If you can limit it to that, that's really the best. you got to limit it to less than a few drinks a week, really. That's if you drink more than a few drinks a week, you're heading down the dark path. If you drink every single day, you're in trouble. In fact, if you do any of these drugs every single day, you're in trouble because that means that it's become part of your daily ritual. And I would suggest that the best life is a sober life. It's more fulfilling on every level, even though, as I said, some of these things can be useful at some times and places. So, alcohol. The first time you use it, it takes it takes a drink or two to begin to feel the effects. Not only do you feel more powerful, you will be louder, for example. You'll be more clumsy. And these effects exaggerate the more that you drink. The first time that you drink, if you were to drink 5 drinks, you'd be completely smashed, obliterated. And this is one of the bad sides to alcohol is what we call the hangover. Man, you don't want to be there. And you will, okay? If you take your foot and you put it down the alcohol path, you will find the hangover, okay? That's going to happen. And let me tell you something, you won't like it, especially if you do what most of us have done, which is go pretty far down the hangover path. Because let me tell you something, that path is not pretty. The hangover path, as I was saying. Man, let me tell you what happens. So, the alcohol experience, if you drink, now the best way to do alcohol, the first time is going to be at a location like a party with your friends, and you're going to not want to have people there that you are in conflict with, and you're going to want to have people there whose communication that you have with them is at an intuitive level. They can practically finish your sentences. That will eliminate any possible confusion as you begin to slur your words. Because that's typically what happens after a few drinks. If you manage to cut it off at just a couple of drinks, then you might not feel the effects of the hangover the first time. If you do, at that point, it may be just a little headache or something the next day, right? When you wake up, you're like, oh, my head's a little hurty. Let me tell you something. If you go ahead and drink, okay, I'll tell you a story. One of my friends, when he was like 13 or something, he went out with his older cousins, and they were like, "Ah, we're gonna get you drunk," and and they bought him a 6-pack of beer, and before he could drink it, his mom busted them, and his mom was like, "Oh, you bought a 6-pack, huh? Well, you're gonna sit here and drink every one." And let me tell you something. Oh, that put him off alcohol for years, if not ever. It may have been a great thing. It may have been child abuse. I mean, it wasn't child abuse. He's fine. He's very successful. But I can tell you that when you drink that much, it's just a Gen X story. It's just a Gen X story. We pass that story around among Gen X people, okay? We've all had that friend. Our parents weren't home. So what happens is the next day, all the stuff that you drank comes back. It just comes right back up like it's been sitting in your stomach all night long. Everything else that you ate, and you ate some more shit. Trust me, you got hungry and you went out and got some late night Taco Bell, and that's coming up too. Man, it's not good. And when you get into that, boy, you can, heaving your guts out the next day. Okay, and here's the thing: it doesn't stop there. Sometimes you drink so much, you heave your guts out so much, your guts are all heaved out, and then you get to the dry heaves. And that's exactly what they sound like. They're dry because there's nothing coming out, no liquid, nothing, and you're just heaving, like you're just convulsing, and it's terrible because you're just retching, and it's like a long, horrible contraction, a cough, and nothing happens. And they could go on for fucking hours. I've seen people fucking do that for hours. It's horrifying. Then they're fine the next day. And they swear off their alcohol, especially that brand. And that lasts about a week. For some people manage to quit that exact alcohol for forever. And some people manage to quit everything forever at that point because, boy, that's a powerful indicator. You can. That's really. I mean, it gets worse than that too. I mean, if you drink more than that, like let's say you're a fucking huge idiot, and somebody dares you to pound like an entire bottle of vodka, and then you chug it, right? You go into the hospital. You're going to the hospital. You're getting your stomach pumped because if you don't, you're gonna die. Okay, that's basically what it is. If you drink too much, I mean, they can give you some shit, I'm sure, to counteract it in some way, like blood. But generally speaking, it's you're in bad shape. So I hope this is recording. All right. What's it good for? I know I said it was good for something. Here is what it's good for: weddings and funerals. And as I said, if you can limit it to a couple of drinks, there is a certain amount of extroversion that can be harnessed, a certain amount of courage that can be, as I said, harnessed. You can use it. You can ride around in that courage and then later on remember what that felt like and re-access it, and without the alcohol. And so that's useful. So, and also, if you did it right and you didn't drink too much at the wedding and the funeral and really embarrass yourself and ruin the family, you might have been able to crack the ice with some relationships and advance your relationships in ways that, shall we say, you couldn't otherwise. Alcohol may be responsible for the continuation of the human race. I mean, seriously. It is aphrodisiac for guys, for sure, in the sense that the more alcohol you have, boy, your standards just drop. I mean, that's just the way that it is. You start justifying things. It's like your vision narrows. The scope of what you are noticing shrinks. And it shrinks not only in space, but in time. So tomorrow becomes irrelevant because that's tomorrow. Fucking way over there. So is that cop car way over there. But all of a sudden, it's tomorrow, and that girl is, in your bed. It can be bad. So, or good. It could be good. It could be very good. It could be the only way you ever get together. So, I mean, parties is another pretty good use for alcohol. Regular parties of all types. And but you gotta be careful. Don't drink yourself into the throwing up. Don't drink yourself out of the party. That's what you can do. What happens is you have a drink and you feel good and you go out and you interact with the party and it's working. You're enjoying yourself and you're meeting people and it's fun and they're enjoying you and you're like, I should have another drink. But that's not true. What you want to do is you want to preserve that as much as possible. So here is the best strategy. What you do is you have yourself a drink and limit yourself to like the beer or the wine. That is, don't start drinking alcohol because, I mean, if you do, do it with fruit juice and a bunch of other shit so that you don't drink too much of it. And then after you have one drink, your first drink, get yourself a big ass glass of water. Okay? A big glass of water. And drink the water. Drink the water. When you're done with the water, you can have another drink. That's the way that it goes. So, if you alternate like that, it will do a couple things. Number one, it'll slow you down from drinking too much. It'll break your habit of drinking the alcohol and the connection you think you have to how it's making you feel and the way you're performing at the party. It'll limit your intake of alcohol. It'll rehydrate you. It'll prevent you from having that hangover. It's really and it could stop you from getting in trouble, on a number of levels. So that's my advice: is go to the party, have one drink, and then have a water. Fill your beer bottle up with water. And it's like you're still drinking beer, but you're not. You're drinking water. And at least do that. And then limit the number of drinks you have to like 2 or 3 per session, per alcoholic session. Maybe 4 or 5 if it goes on for a long time. You metabolize every half hour or so, every hour, an ounce of alcohol. So if it's a long thing, but if you drag it out, trust me, you're heading for hangover land. So anyway, that, my kids, is alcohol in a nutshell. All right? So alcohol comes with big warnings. If you feel yourself going down any of those extra use type of roads, then, and that includes, it could be, so the warning signs are use, everyday use, or use to excess to the extent that you're incapacitated the following day, or pretty much at any time, or you're substituting all of your pleasure for the booze. If you feel yourself doing any of those things or see any of your friends slipping into that, that's the warning sign. Get them some help. Get them back to a sober life. The way back, by the way, is incremental change or incremental patterning. What you do is, let's say you're a day drinker, or you do any of these substances on the regular and you don't want to. You simply have a string of days in which you don't. Get yourself one of those retreats in the woods or something. Take a cruise where you can't have access. Don't do the cruise for booze if you're trying to get away from booze. But my point is that you can restructure your daily habits simply by substituting in other behaviors. But they do have to have some joy to them. They have to have some attraction, or you're not going to be able to make the substitution. So I've got another video on that about incremental change. But I wanted to include something here and just tell you that none of the addictions to any of these substances are unbreakable. Even cigarettes, which by most accounts is the hardest to break, it can be done. So a little hypnosis, All right.